Can't be.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is March 18th, 2025, Knox County Commissioners, and we're gonna be wowed by our water and sewer guy, aren't we, Jeff?
Yeah, you're gonna be wowed, all right.
You want to go ahead and just share with us?
Okay, all right. You're gonna put the thing you were up there. You guys can kind of follow along with that, but I have some notes to go through here. So as I'd said a couple months ago when I was here, that we'll kind of progress through our project list that we have developed at the beginning of the year, and we'll add and take away from some of that. So I'm just going to kind of give you an update on some of those things and where we're at. So Northridge Pump Station is scheduled for next week. So we'll be finish the rehab on that, new control panel and pumps, bypass pump while we're doing that. So the guys will getting that all set up this week to be ready. Hopefully we don't get a bunch of rain next week because that does cause a problem, but scheduled to finally get done with that. That's been since early last fall. So we're ready to go. One of the other things, and one of the big things that I said that I'm evaluating my managers on, is getting some camera work done on our sewer lines. We have a lot of I&I problems, as does everybody. I&I infiltration into our sewer system, clean water coming into there that we have to treat during storm times, wet weather times. So to facilitate that, they are doing mostly, it's on the back lot lines, sewer right away, cleaning and clearing. So I think you all got a little message that we sent out last week, so everybody was aware that we were going to be in their areas, mowing down trees and weeds and all those kinds of things. So they do have Grand Valley subdivision all done now, pretty extensive. They found, I think they found every manhole that they needed to find. There was lost manholes in there. So it will help in the future to be able to find as we start building houses and we're trying to line up sewers. Plus, when we get in to do the camera work, they need to be able to get into each one of those manholes. So now they've got access to it. So, and tomorrow, hopefully, we'll kind of see how that goes, depending on what the rain is on Thursday. We're going to start on the Northridge subdivision next.
Jeff, when do they, was just speaking of the rain, when do they start filling the lake back up?
Soon. Yeah.
Start.
Yeah, and we'll notice an increase in our flow then. So we obviously know that we have some issues with the lake, what we call the lake lines around there. So when the lake is up, our flows go up. So it correlates definitely. That the lake also raises the water table, around too. So we'll see a difference.
Did you have anything that we needed to get done before?
No, there's nothing that we needed to do in there, or we would have had it. We have done. My guys are in connection with those, in communication with Apple Valley really close, so we know when they're dumping, or hey, the lake's up a little bit, they're going to be dumping some water this day or whatever, because sometimes we get some complaints from the neighbors, people with the smell from the water coming from the lake. So that water that's laying down in the bottom is kind of septic. So no, we don't need to do anything, Jason, that required the lake being down. We have a PO written for cleaning well number 1. We talked about we're on a 5-year rotation with the wells. Well number 1 is the next one up. We got a couple quotes, and we've got a PO with Jameson for $14,000 to clean that well. So that was substantially less than the other folks that we had contacted. So
when they clean the wells, are they steaming the pipes, or
no? They actually put acid down there. So they take the pump off. They look at all of that. If there needs to be some repairs, that would be an additional to the 14,000. If there appears to be something wrong with the motor and or the pump, which we don't anticipate, but that's an add-on. So they actually put acid down in there. They blow air into that, and that acid starts to eat away at that calcium buildups in those veins, and then break that loose. So the water then will, come into the well. So do that. Purge all that, then they let it set, then they I think they purge it again, then they pump all that water, and then we chlorinate, and then they do a pump test to see where they were at to begin with, and then what we gained, or at least staying the same, so that we don't lose in our productions down there. So that number 1 well, you guys weren't here, was a well that had been out of service for 20 some years. We had never used it, and the EPA kind of said, do something with it or plug it. So we actually revitalized it. It's probably been 6 or 7 years ago that we ended up going in, new pump and all that kind of stuff, but got it cleaned and got it back up to actually better than what they had anticipated in production on that. So a resource that we weren't utilizing that we are now. So we talked about something that we tried to save some money on this year was that my staff is changing all the oil and all these standby generators. We used ARPA money to put generators in at all the pump stations. 23 stationary generators got done. We have 3 portable ones, 2 of which we'll be asking to put on gov deals and sell that we won't need anymore because now that we have stationary and we did a light plant, they still have PVA to do yet, and the portable pump that we have that we're going to be using for Northridge, they're changing oil on it today. Those are the only 2 things done. So those guys did a pretty good job. It took them about 10 days, I think, to get through all that, but quite a bit of oil. A lot of oil. We have a contractor that will take all of ours. He burns it, so we don't have to pay to get rid of our waste oil. So he's gracious enough. He brings us another carboy in, and we switch them out, and he burns it, and we can get rid of it, and we're done with it. So here's something we're kind of a little bit proud of, and then I got something at the end that we're really good at. But we have been working with a new lab. We did some price comparisons and stuff. We're still comparing their results to what we're getting. It appears that we're probably going to be changing labs, and we're going to save several $1,000s a year. I don't really have a number. I can get a number, but it's pretty substantial. Overall with all the analysis, and that's stuff that we do for our water side and for all 3 sewer plants and everything that we're required to do. So some of them were $20-$30 a sample difference on some of the things. So we're pretty happy with that. We just wanted to make sure before we threw our eggs in their basket that things were going to work out well. We get our results back, and everything's good. So
what are some of the things that the lab looks for us?
We'll go anywhere from like the copper leads we do once a year for Apple Valley for our water system. We do bacteria samples every month throughout our water system for the water side. Then there's some THMs, and there's some volatile stuff there that they do that we're required periodically do on the water side. All 3 sewer plants, total suspended solids, BODs, ammonias, copper, lead, low level mercury out of little gel away. We do that once a quarter. We do a little bit of stuff in-house. Most of our stuff we do is pH, DO, temperature. We just do the minor things, some sludge solids and stuff like that. But anything else that's in our permit is all farmed out to a lab.
So copper and lead, I'm not sure, how would that get into our system?
Copper and lead is from the piping.
Okay.
And that was one of the things, if you remember, we were doing the copper and lead, we were doing the lead line surveys that had to be done last October 14th or whatever it was. We didn't find any service lines that were lead service lines in our system. So we kind of were blessed about that. Lots of people have lots of more work to do. We kind of lucked out a little bit. So
looks like the city's getting ready to start doing that now. Did I see something recently that they were going to be sending out to find out if there's galvanized lines or something? So are they maybe going through that same process you already went through?
supposed to be done.
I was gonna say, yeah, it was supposed to be done last
Hey,
October.
We were all supposed to be done in October. It was mandated. That was a federal mandate. So we were all done. Well, I know that Gambier had put out earlier, like January or so. They were, or not January, but like August of last year, trying to get information, and we had a hard time getting information from our customers. But of the 3,300 customers, we had about 1,000 that responded back. So it would have saved us some serious time and efforts if everybody would have cooperated. So we physically had to go out to each meter pit, suck them out, and determine what what material was on our side, what we were feeding to the meter pit, and what was coming out of the meter pit. Now, we don't know what's underground after that, but that's why we do copper and lead. And we get some results back for copper and lead, mostly copper, but there'll be some lead, and it goes back to their housing pipes. What's inside their houses.
So a lot of people have lead in their house, yeah.
Well, that it was all right. I have a house that was built in the 60s, and that it's all copper piping, lead solder. So it leaches. I mean, it can leach out your spigots, your water spigots. A lot of them, they've mandated and taken that out, so there's nothing can have lead in them now. But a lot of our older houses still have them, so it leaches out with the water, and so that's where you end up getting that at. So that's why you should probably when you pull your water the first time, you should run a little bit of water, flush your toilets or whatever, because the water laying in your pipes over the night, that's how we sample them. They have to leave them set for 8 hours to get any leaching that they can into that water. So you probably shouldn't drink your first drop of water if you've got an older house like that. And that's anywhere. I mean, I'm not just talking our water, I'm talking everywhere. So yeah, there's numerous things, and I can kind of come up with a ballpark once we switch, but we're going to look at several $1,000s a year in savings on the lab, which is we had talked to them in the past, and they weren't that aggressive on their pricing, but apparently they wanted us as a customer, so they've done a good job.
Is it a 1-year rate, 2-year rate?
That would be this year's rate, yes, and they've been pretty steady about their rate increases. So we're not gonna be jumping back and forth through that. Booster station, the VFD project we've had this thing for a year now. They're waiting for a cabinet. We're still waiting for some of our resources, but that's the only thing is a cabinet to put this in. Once we're ready to schedule it and get it going and get that booster. We're down. We only have 2 booster pumps, which we have a backup each time, but still like to have that third one in there to feel a little bit safer about that. We had some problems with the centrifuge, ended up having to do a whole polymer rebuild. The polymer is what flux. We have solids, water. You try to separate the water from the solids to make a sludge that we actually take to the landfill. This polymer helps coagulate all of that together, and we've been having some issues with running that, and so we ended up having to rebuild that whole thing, which was a few $1,000s and a little bit of time, but everything is up and running now good. And my final thing, which I'm really proud of, this is a group effort. We had what they call the sanitary survey from Ohio EPA for Bladensburg and Little Jellaway. Traditionally do that once during your permit cycle. So your permit's good for 4 years. So they usually come, they go through everything. They go through our books, they go through our notes. We have log books, we have bench sheets, all the stuff that we do. Went through Bladensburg, came back up, discussed it. We did it on March 6th, very, very cold, nasty day. Went through Little Jellaway, sat back down. I went with her at the end of the day just for our exit interview, and she stated that there will be no recommendations. That's not normal. Okay.
Good job. Great
That is
job.
not, that's not a normal thing. I've been doing this for 36 years. I don't think I've ever had somebody say that. I mean, it's kind of like OSHA coming in. OSHA's always going to go find something, no matter how good you are, they're going to find something. I mean, it's the same way. They're usually like that too. So I was pretty proud that we've done a good job. Have a good staff, and she was happy with the way we were taking care of things. So I think that's a
Great job.
feather in everybody's back, and that's good for all of us. We have a really good working relationship. They've had a lot of turnover at Ohio EPA. The guys that I dealt with for years are, guys and gals are no longer there. So we have a lot of new ones, but we have a really good working relationship with them. So
Is she the one we had for when we were constructing PVA?
yes, correct. Yes. But they have different divisions, remember. So she was not the one that was making the decisions on the sludge and what we did and didn't have to take away. But we have a jar of the sludge that we hauled, and I did make sure that I showed her what we hauled, and that it was mostly clay that we took to a landfill to make sure that we had done our job and our due diligence. I am working on updating the permit for PVA. It's kind of one of them things that you scratch your head on. I'm asking for lower limits. That's kind of weird, but I'm required to do that. That was part of our permit to install when we got the permit to build a new plant, was that after the fact, we would go back in and ask for lower limits because we have a better technology plant than we did with the lagoon system. So it's kind of weird. I really have a hard time saying, hey, can you give me more stringent limits to meet? But we'll be all right. We'll meet them, but that was one of their requirements. So we're working on that. Hopefully I'll have that back into them next week. So we'll be good to go. I think that is it. I think I mean, we've gotten some stuff done. It's the mowing and the finding of the manholes. We bought some new headsets so the guys can communicate with the equipment operators. So we have a guy in the truck with a map telling them, hey, you need to go north X amount of feet. And we've got people down there so they don't run over stuff, because we're talking, it's a jungle. It's a jungle back there. So so those have helped out, and hopefully that will help out as we try to find some of this I&I and get rid of some of it. So.
Good. And then Pleasant View Acres is doing everything we anticipated it would do.
Yeah, we actually had, I guess I could go over that. We had the filter guys come back in, it was like a week ago, might have been 10 days ago, because we never really got a good true startup, because when they were there and started up, we'd had to haul water in to get it to go through. So we actually had to plant. So they did some fine tweaking, because we had a few issues out there that we weren't real happy with, and Greg and myself just didn't know how to solve them. So they came back in and did some tweaking, and we're better than we were. Yes, but yes, we're meeting our permit limits. We'll meet the new permit limits that they're going to give us, that I'm graciously asking for. So yeah, we should be good. We did actually haul our first sludge out of there and took it back to Little Jellaway to run through the centrifuge. So
Jeff, out there, I know it was fall. I think you did some overseeding planting. Did we get anything to grow, or?
yeah, there's grass growing out there. We still have the silt fence up, so we don't, any sediment, won't leave the site. It's hitting that, not getting to the creek. As I said before, we still need some dirt. There's still some low places and things have settled, but that was a swamp trying to put dirt across some of that. There was just no bottom.
So like the lagoons, is that smooth out through there, or did you?
It's fairly smooth, yes. And there's grass growing. Yes, we already planted grass, and it's all green.
And stuff coming back, like none of that. Any seedlings you think?
Well, I'm sure there'll be trees, because we're not planning on keeping that mowed, so.
But we're not gonna plant anything there.
We're not gonna plant anything, but I'm pretty sure that Mother Nature will take it over pretty quick. So it didn't take very long for that stuff to grow around the lagoons, as we kept them mowed.
Okay.
So we still have a little bit of work to do out there. Once it gets good and dry, there needs to be some tapering, and then we still need a little bit more dirt hauled in there up in the northeast corner that was really, really wet, and we buried the dozer in there several times. So yeah, that's one of them things that we just quit and we're done. So
we still have the dam-like banks.
Yes, yep.
We won't take those.
Nope, not taking those. Those are a road down, plus that the sewer and electric all goes down through the middle of that.
Okay.
So, and we still have to camera, it's still on here, and my guys know it. We still have to camera that effluent line. Remember, there were some issues with their installation, so still need to camera that before the warranty is out, to make sure that it's good still, before the warranty or their bond is.
They did come back out and redo that.
Yes, they
Okay.
did. Yeah,
Okay.
just unconventional method. So that's why I was pretty adamant that we have it cameraed before we sign off on it officially at the end.
Yes.
So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So yep.
Well, thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Next, you wanna go ahead and do these while we're waiting?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we have approved a bid for the Knox County engineer. This was for his roadside mowing 2025, and he's recommending that go to Running G Farms LLC in the amount of $97,929.60.
Well, I looked those over. There's still a wide spread on that.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty widespread of the dollars amounts on
And
there.
sometimes it can be if they have like equipment. Or they're working in the area, maybe there's a better price, I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of variables, but, yeah. But he reviews them pretty
Pretty extensively.
extensively, so that's a recommendation.
Motion to approve.
I second it.
Those favors say aye.
All right.
Then we have the approved utility permit for Knox Energy Co-op, and this is Apple Valley Drive in Howard Township.
A motion to approve.
Second.
And those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then we have approved the County Commissioners Association of Ohio Workers' Comp Group Retro rating plan for 2025. This is an agreement. This is, Penny's got it ready for you to sign, and Sedgwick is our group retro that Courtney works with, so I think we're all set. This is just a renewal.
Motion to approve.
I second it.
And those favors say aye.
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 I think on this. It just requires Bill to sign that in 2 places. Okay, we have a support letter for aerial application for the insect control measures or materials related to the spongy moth. So they've been doing this, what is this, like 3 years in a row, I think, Penny?
Mhm.
That we've done this, and they just notify us that they're gonna be in the area and spraying for those. This was an acknowledgement from the Federal Aviation Administration that we've done now.
So it's not an approval that we approve them
No, it's
spraying
the-
for spongy moth, it's
You're
acknowledgement.
That
Acknowledging.
you've been informed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I read through that and it says it's all organic stuff.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because I was concerned.
Well,
that,
that's true. I
yeah.
thought, well, we didn't even know about this. Okay, motion to approve.
Second.
Those favors say aye.
Uh,
Each of you will sign that letter. And then we have 2 resolutions. I'll do the first one, but I'll just to kind of let you know, worked with the county prosecutor. This is to authorize the sheriff to dispose of obsolete and surplus radios as well as surplus vehicles. So the first one are radios that are outdated, and he's going to be donating these to other law enforcement agencies. And the costs are less than $200 each. But we do a resolution so we can take that off our asset list.
Did it say the quantity?
Yeah, how many?
okay.
I don't
I
think
think
it
it's
is. I
the-
think it's just in general as they replace them, because they're gonna be getting all their new radios this year, so I think it's as they come in, the other ones can go out, so they're not hoarding up huge quantities of used items. So it looks like he's gonna give these to some law enforcement in West Virginia.
So I need a motion.
Motion to approve.
I second it.
And those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Now, the other one here is for their van, and this one, they have a van out there that was purchased with commissary funds years ago. The van's obsolete, doesn't need used, so they're asking permission, they're gonna sell it by sealed bid. What we're gonna do on that, I kind of went through the financial piece. We're gonna go ahead and, once it's sold, they'll bring me the check, I'll get it deposited into the general fund. Then the general fund will cut a check back to the sheriff's office, and he can deposit that in his commissary fund. But that way we have an audit trail of the sale and the money, and because the vehicle was titled to the commissioners. So that way the money will come into the general fund, and then we'll release the check back to them to put in the commissary fund.
The only thing I see here is a little bit of, not to be that guy correction, but it's one obsolete vehicle, not surplus vehicles, correct?
That's correct. This is one van.
How's he gonna advertise? He's not gonna do the.
I think
.gov.
we're gonna work with Chip on that. No, they don't want to do it through gov deals. They think they can sell it locally and make more money. That's their plan. So Chip's gonna walk them through doing it through the typical sealed bid process. So you may see this again, or it may go out there. I don't know yet.
So by signing this resolution, it's not giving them future authority to
This is
dispose
for
of
one
vehicles, only
vehicle.
one. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yep.
A motion to approve.
Second it.
And those in favor say aye.
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 I think that's it. I've got right now a couple things when they're done. You're gonna, if you send that down, that goes with the gypsy moth
Okay,
Thanks. And then if you guys could go ahead and review and sign these bills so we can get them down to the auditor's office. That would be good before BOE comes in.
I noticed on the gypsy moth thing, it was a small area, the drags they sprayed.
um,
The gypsy moth, sponge moth.
so how do they know what area they're located in?
They have a sponge moth locator that travels around.
Yeah.
Is it called a drone? That's what those drones are.
What's your
They're
job?
looking for
I
gypsy
am a
moths.
sponge moth locator.
I won't even ask how they locate them. Maybe certain trees are conducive to having gypsy moths, and we don't have that many of them. They're just in a concentrated area.
Well, I know there was a page in here. I'm not seeing it.
It tells what the chemicals are.
No, that I was supposed to sign and I'm not seeing that page. So
What does it say? This?
No, all you had to do is the support letter.
that was it?
That's
Okay,
it.
okay. So there's nothing inside of that. And that means, okay.
No, and the treatment block is this red area.
Yeah. Just pretty much trying to city Mount Vernon.
Most of it.
So they're city moths.
Yeah.
Did you drop the barrel and let him know he got his money?
I did. He said, thank you.
While we're waiting, I want to apologize to the sheep banquet. I was coming to your banquet. Somehow it wasn't on my calendar, so I apologize. I didn't come. It was delicious. Did you guys eat it this year? Yeah.
Yeah.
Delicious, wasn't it?
Tastes like pot ribs.
Yeah,
Beef
yeah.
ribs, pot ribs.
Whatever the sauce they use is delicious.
The extra tasting that you were good.
Jason, are we ready? for
Yeah,
the
you guys sign those, and Penny's gonna get those down to
You have
the
to
auditor and
find
other
both.
than that, yeah, we're. Yeah. Get them. Yeah, you go the other way, that's fine.
What's your job? Moths. Finder. They go find moths.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
How are you, sir?
Mr. Guy?
You.
Have you recovered from the election?
Oh, there's another one already.
Just last week. We're already starting the other one.
Right.
Yeah, so as you talk, go ahead and introduce yourself because you're being recorded.
Exactly.
We want to make sure that we have this for posterity's sake.
Excellent. I'm Jeff Gaki, coming to you as member of the Board of Elections today. Yeah, he is several as. I'm Jim Blazer, Director of the Board of Elections.
And Jack Goodman, Deputy Director of the Board of Election.
Thank you.
No Adam today, you're filling in.
I'm filling it.
Yeah.
Yep. We needed somebody who could keep it short, so I filled in.
There you go.
Okay, we'll see.
We'll see. So, thanks for taking the time. This is, I don't think if we've come in this manner about this position ever, right? It was just sort of always handled, yeah, we just kind of always handled
Yeah.
discussion wise, mostly through Jason, who would talk to you all and come back and forth. So we thought it might be helpful just to have a little discussion about creating a, I'll let Jack and Jim talk about the position itself, but a new position, staff position, full-time at the Board of Elections. We're hoping that there's been a lot of back and forth about this, like I mentioned. You're a new group, obviously, or at least two of you. So we're hoping that we're just kind of consider this all in the moment, right? And not kind of think about what's happened in the past or any of those previous conversations, because circumstances are different now. That's kind of what we're saying. So like, just kind of hear us out right now, right? And make your decision based on that. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So I'll give you the big picture of why we're asking for a new position. The first is elections are more technical than they used to be regarding computer stuff. They're just more technical than they used to be. They're also more complicated than they used to be. You're all familiar with like unfunded mandates. We get those too. The Secretary of State, the legislature says, hey, you got to start doing this now. And we're not going to give you any money for it. We're not going to give you any more people for it. So just find a way to make it happen. Happened all the time at the schools. It still does, right? I think we're all victim of unfunded mandates. So they're more technical, they're more complicated. We have learned over time that as these unfunded mandates come in, they kind of have been getting centralized with one person. And that's bad. Like we want, because if that person is sick or on vacation, you got to have somebody who can fill in, right? So part of creating this position just like creates a little bit of room, maybe in everybody's schedule, to do a lot of cross training and have a lot of redundancy of skills, so that if one person steps out to go to lunch, another person can step up and fill in that role and meet the need of the voter at the counter. That makes sense. So it's partly just capacity building. Yeah, so those are the four things: redundancy, spread the work out so it's not concentrated in one position, meet the unfunded mandates, and meet the increased technical needs of elections these days.
I think
So
one of the things is that we can also kind of address as to what it's not. It's not a strict IT position. So it's not just that we would have IT be able to replace those things. It's more of an election technician position where the person is educated and trained in the electionware software, the registration software, and also our security. Security has become a big thing as far as meetings and understanding where our vulnerabilities are. I won't discuss those things in a public meeting, but there are things that we look at constantly that is something that is above and beyond what an IT function or calling IT would be. And so those things are all important. And Jack will talk about like the kind of our cycles and how we do things. But we've looked at this and taken the past and looked at how this really, what it really is. And I think it's a little bit different messaging to you all as to its importance.
So this is a multi-purpose position then, the way you're explaining it?
It's well,
Jeff, you want to run through like an election cycle? That might answer your
Sure,
question.
yeah,
If you can kind of see all the different aspects of one election and the timeframes.
So the election cycle runs for about 4 months, 3 months before and then election day and a month after. As you all know, because you all filed petitions with us, you can file a petition about 3 months before election day. It's 90 days. Once we get those filings, I basically don't stop running. My heartbeat doesn't slow down for 3.5 months. And we run through a series of processes behind the scenes that isn't necessarily available to the public or isn't necessarily like visible. We check petitions, we check forms, we start ballot design, we start ballot checks and proofs. We're checking everything from making sure the precincts are set. We have to make sure that who is voting in the right precincts on the right elections takes place. All of these tasks have to be accomplished long before early vote starts. And then early vote kicks in, and then I'm up to an even higher level of stress and time consumption, because we can make sure that early vote, which is an increasingly popular form of voting, people love to be able to come in and vote on their time in that month before the elections. We now take in more than half of our overall vote during early vote. So election day is becoming less of an emphasis for voting, and it's not even so much absentee mail as it is simply absentee early in person.
Mhm.
So that early vote center becomes critical. And that takes up about 20 hours of my week trying to make sure that that is running effectively and efficiently. Some of it is IT work. I can always call upon county IT to do things that I cannot do, but a lot of it is simply printer wrangling or connections being reset or helping people log in. This position would take over many of those various tasks that take place over that period.
So it is a multi-purpose position.
It is a multi-purpose position.
Right.
And
And
as a,
she is gonna do a range of
correct.
jobs.
When we looked at this last year, we had this, they came forward and we had this discussion and we did table it during the budget to bring to the new board of commissioners. We talked about Jim and Jack and Adam, their other board member, I met him over there, and we talked about options, and I talked to IT and we thought, well, what if we can support it through IT and send somebody over there, but I think the issue came for us was the 4 months, 3 months lead up and the month after. So we're like, if we're doing that twice a year, we can't allocate out a resource to that. So that's why it's kind of back again to them to ask for this position that's dedicated just to their office.
And I think that one of the things is that when we don't have the depth to be able to do that, and it's not a specialization that IT has, we have to call on a vendor. That vendor costs $2,000 a day to have them on site to do that. And we have that vendor, and the board has asked for that vendor to be on site during election day. So that in case something, high level system thing can be derailed, they're there to be able to do that so that there's no disruption to the election itself. But having them there in the operational side for long periods of time doesn't make financial sense. And so it would be very, very expensive to have that. And to train a technician is about I think the number was their number, I'm sorry, it's evading me.
For the system
For
training.
the week.
So-
Training.
So as an example, for the electionware software that I learned sort of on the go, not through any formal training, and I'm getting pretty good at it, but they still have sort of gaps. Is a $4,000 cost for a week of training, which I never bothered to take. There are all kinds of extra expenses that we're working to avoid for the county by doing this stuff ourselves. We'd like to reduce that $20,000 to $30,000 we spend on vendor services, vendor assistance, to get that down to $4,000 or $5,000.
So this position helps you trim fat out of your
Mhm.
budget? Is that what I'm hearing? Right?
So it will take up certain resources, but other budget lines will have less requests per year.
Sure.
We won't have, we do logic and accuracy testing. One of the critical things to make sure that the ballots run the way they should and that every vote is going to be counted correctly. We test machines. We usually have vendors come out to make sure we have enough staffing and expertise in that. But with this position, we will no longer need them to do that. And we're getting much better ourselves, but again, we've come a long way in the last couple of years. But if I need another set of eyes that has the same expertise and same skill set, and it is a specific kind of skill set. And if I don't have someone to check my work as I go, then the risk of the error or inaccurate election rises, especially as we pack on more and more stuff to the sort of my half of the election cycle.
And we work on a zero defect basis, meaning that there can't be mistakes. We have to be able to deliver on time when the voter shows up at our doorstep, that we're up and we're running, and that it reflects what their desires are, who they've chosen to mark the X or push the button, however they, on the screen. We have to be able to be assured that there is accuracy. We also have to have redundancy within the office to be able to do that. So it's not just you do your work and you do it well, but you also have people checking behind you. That in case something, a fat finger thing gets done differently, well, then we can catch those things. That becomes more and more difficult. The days of where we were just more accounting and doing things a little bit on a spreadsheet is very different than it is today, where it's much more, the security directives that we get, all of those things that we get from the Secretary of State, from Homeland Security, all of those things aren't things that you should do. There are things that are demanded of us that, and those things rise to the top. Well, then you have to, those things, we need someone to also be part of that security side of it. And then we have meetings on security on a regular basis. Our IT department sits in on some of those. But sometimes those things involve equipment and software inside on electionware and tabulation areas that IT is not familiar with. And so we want to make sure this person is rechecking all of, it's a constant. It's not one time that you check it. We're checking things daily because we have to assure something didn't happen overnight. And so we have a lot of systems and a lot of alarms and a lot of folks looking at it that will tell us, but there's also things local that we need to be addressing and looking at. And then you'll have lots of other things that just enter into the day.
It looks like I'm gonna be the only one that talks, maybe. This sounds like a really unique individual you're trying to put in place. So that being said, how long the training process before somebody like that would be up and actually running in that position? I think the way you're talking, it's pretty complex job that you're trying to fulfill here.
So some things can be done sort of watching and observing, and that is sort of how I learned, but I don't think that is always the best way to learn something.
Yeah.
So we would have a vendor come in and do a full day of training on our voter registration system, because all of these things are sort of tied to that voter registration system. So we pull that information out. Once they get that training, ideally, we would want them sort of shadowing through the process from that 100-day mark or that 90-day mark where you submitted petitions and watch all of the individual processes take place and sort of start to assign them tasks to sort of build them up, having them do checks and proofreading and making sure that things are being entered in correctly to the point where they can be operating and doing ballot design on their own. That will take, I would say, probably a full election cycle.
Yeah.
But if we hired sometime in the coming months, by the end of November, we would have this person to be able to do ballot design for the next.
Being in the battle will be part of the training after that.
As opposed to being the apprentice or being trained, right? They'd be an individual that would be able to be standalone. And we are a small shop, but we're kind of in between. We're not the smallest shop in the state, and we're certainly not the largest in the state. We're not a Franklin County, but we're also not Benton County, which has 2 part-time staff. So
we all do a lot of different things. Right. We all have to know a little bit about different things, but we definitely have division of labor and things that we have to specialize in. Administration versus election. That's how we sort of divide deputy and director.
And the other, the other 5 or 6 months that you're not in the election intensity, there's still enough work for that person to.
Yes, it's a good question. So when we're not running an election and receiving voters into our offices or on election day, what we're doing is we're proofing petitions either from local candidates, statewide. We don't get any statewide, but we get statewide petitions. So on referendums and other things, so we'll get. It's not uncommon for the state to send us petitions of Knox County residents that have signed a petition for whatever that question and issue is that's going to appear on the ballot. We have to check all of those. We've received as many as like 4,000, 5,000 of those from the state. We then have 10 days to return those back to the state. So that becomes a little bit of it's a little tsunami for us that, we don't want to have staff just sitting around, but we also have to have staff available to be able to have these. And we don't generally know from the state what the volume is. So we receive it and then you have to implement it and check those. And those are all inside our election systems where we check signatures, we check addresses, we check whether the person exists or whether the person's deceased, all of those things. We retain all of that for the county. We just have to go in there and approve it. And there's a certain criteria that you have to do that.
Yes, there's also list maintenance, which the state dictates to us, and that generally happens in those downtimes. You can't do it. You can't sort of check the voter rolls and start removing people, right before an election. You gotta do it in the downtime between. So it's the NCOA process and other confirmation processes that we go through dictated by the state. So
What does NCOA mean? So that they,
national change of address. That's one of the primary ways that we know that someone is moving in and out of a county.
Right.
The state's working managing.
And that's, can I go back? I wanna,
Go ahead.
so, and this might be a little bit hard to do. I know we talked about, what you wanted to pay the position but hypothetically, let's say you hired George or Ginger or whoever to do the job. What do we think the offsets are gonna be? So if by the time we do salary benefits, what do we think the reduction in those contracts and those things realistically would be, so we know what the net, so that way, we've talked a little bit about this, but so the commissioners will know what's the net effect to the budget. I think that'll be the ultimate thing they wanna know.
So I did throw together a little,
thank you, Jason.
They didn't tell me that.
We didn't tell him.
I tried to calculate it at the bottom of my paper myself.
There you go.
Let me ask you a question before we review this. Because of the large election that we just had, is this dictating that you think that may be duplicated and you're gonna need people? Or do you need people, period? Do you understand what I'm asking? You need people.
Period.
We bring a lot of people on temporarily around election.
Right, I knew that, yeah.
And there's some that work on election day, poll workers, but then there are others that stick around for a few months
Right.
before and after the election. Those people cover a lot of the just sort of regular election administration stuff. This is more of that back end needed full-time year-round type of things.
So we're currently running 4 what we call permanent part-time positions. These are our clerks that do our registrations, our data entry. These are not people handling these higher sort of function things. These are just sort of keeping the paper flowing in the office. And I sort of broke that down by those 4 positions and roughly how much it would be. We're looking to reduce those 4 permanent part-time positions from 4 to 2. We talked about a 1.5 reduction, but we're looking at a full 2 reduction to get it to that comparable amount for the payroll for this new position. We're also having some savings. I included that in there for this fiscal year, thanks to the state funding of the May special election. We would have to run it regardless, but the state was kind enough to assist with the budget, to offset the cost of that election.
So the state legislature has sent us $103,000. So that has already been received. That's already in our budget numbers. And it's specific to certain things that we're allowed to spend it on. In the past, what they would do is that they would tell us, okay, run the election and then you can get reimbursed. Here lately, they're doing it where they give it to us up front. I think last year we had that as well, Jason, didn't we? Is that we got it up front. I think historically it's a reimbursement. This makes it a little more easy to do. And so there's an MOU to that we sign with the state saying these are the expenses you're allowed to spend it on, and this is what you're gonna do. And then whatever the balance is, you have to return. And so those things are we're striving to and talking to our elected officials on the state level to continue to give us more of those things so that we can offset that. The reason we have that is because they have a statewide issue that they have on the ballot, so then they get to pay for it. Chargebacks are also something that happens, and I won't go down that rabbit hole today, but happy to come back and talk about our chargebacks, is that we charge for the elections to certain entities. So when something comes up, if a fire levy is up, we'll charge back the cost of that to do that for them. That comes back, but it comes back into the general revenue fund here with the county. It doesn't come back in to offset our budget. But it is a number. I mean, it is a number on a per election basis. So those are all good points. So
And what's not included in there is the potential reductions to those vendor fees, those contractor fees. So $2,000 a visit, at a minimum, we're having about 3 visits per election cycle. So that's 12,000 or yeah, $12,000 a year plus 2 election day on-site visits, which is $5,000 a piece. So that is $22,000, which we could certainly reduce down to 4 to 10.
Yeah, this employee, I'm assuming that this year you will still be paying that vendor that money, because I don't think this employee will be ready to go to alleviate any of that cost by that time. will
We
they?
will still have election site support in
Yeah,
March.
yeah.
Yes.
But that might be offset by the partial year that this position isn't filled.
Right.
And if the person is quick and learns well, potentially we could forego that election assistance for the fall.
What's the total number of full-time employees you have right now?
5.
Five,
Yeah.
okay.
It's in.
And then how many part-time? Is it more than 4 or is it?
4, about 4.5 for part of last year. But we've sort of been reducing some of their hours this year.
But
They've
your
done a
election
good
staff,
job
we
doing
have
that.
33 people.
So we have, so then when you have the 5 and then the 4.5, working, we refer to them as, probably not the correct terminology, but we refer them as our permanent part-time staff. Because we have them to do the petitions and the things that are required, or voter registrations when they come flooding in, we'll have them do that. But then we also have what's seasonal, meaning the ladies that you'll see down at the
Early vote center.
Early vote center, and the people that are,
Our
standing
rovers.
there in our rovers. Those are all directly associated to the election itself, the performance of the election. Those are also something that the state's paying for in this particular election. So we have those, and we try to keep those down to a level. But like I said earlier, that there are times something will come in and then we're scrambling to say, okay, we need this person, or we'll call on them and say, can you come in for 20 hours this week to just check registrations or to check this, or all the multitude of things that we do. And so those things, it's regulating that, and you can't be caught short. You're not allowed to be caught short, but you can't be over, staffed. And so what is that balance? We're meeting on that weekly to, like, what is it that, are we going to be able to fulfill our mission, and can we get that done? Yes, we can. And so it's starting to level out, but it's difficult.
And they've done a good job, and I'll give them credit, it is difficult when we look at. Like, we have to watch part-time employees.
Sure.
They can go over hours on a weekly basis, but for the year,
Year.
they can't exceed a certain number of hours. Then they would become eligible for county benefits.
Benefits.
So for some departments, that's easy to manage. For them, you really have to track that, because the variable hours are at variable times, and they gotta make sure that when they need them, it's not gonna cause them to exceed the number of hours that they can work in a year.
Right. So we've been successful at keeping that so that we don't inadvertently create a new position, right?
I'm looking at this budgeting sheet you handed out to us, so.
I gave you my
Am
copy.
am I assuming that in 2024, your department spent 119,289 on total employees?
That's just for our part-timers.
So that's
Our
for
part-timers.
Okay. And then in 25, you're gonna reduce that by the 44 and the 59 and the 34?
So well, originally we discussed a 1.5 part-time reduction. I
Okay.
put that on there as a separate line, but we're really looking at a 2.
So
reduction of
your
2.
reduction will be 59,644?
Correct.
Correct. And then the June prorated savings of 34, what is that?
That would be, we anticipate on having those part-timers work until the end of the election,
Okay.
until like June 1st or so, and then they will.
So
Part
after
ways.
June, this will kick in as well, is that right?
Correct, so there'll be
you-
a savings on those two part-time employees from June to December of 34,000.
So it'll be 59,644 plus the 34? Am I reading that wrong?
Sorry, I did the first two numbers are as a yearly estimate, and then the June to December would be
So
the,
your actual reduction is the 34,792.
correct.
Okay.
Sorry, I had that as an internal thing,
Yeah.
but I thought it would help you all.
Yeah, well, I need all the help I can get from that. I got you now. Okay, that answers that. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course.
So we're saving, is what we're saying, right? We're saving 34,792
Right.
by
With
creating
part-timers.
one position, on
Yeah.
the two.
By the alleviation of employees.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's a thing that we're constantly analyzing as to where we can, what job descriptions and what people are doing and and building in redundancy so that we're never caught with someone that can handle and deliver. But we also have to build into the vacations, we have to build into sick time.
Sure.
And all of those other things, when you enter all of those into it. Sick time, we never control. We got hit pretty hard right around the holidays, where it was a rolling thing of COVID going through the office. When you have a staff of 5 and in fairly tight quarters, it happens. And so, but the work still has to get done. And so we pivot, and then we'll rely more heavily on the part-time staff, as we call the permanent part-time, and doing that. But there are some things that the part-time staff will never do as far as that's concerned.
Some of this. In 2025, you're saying you're gonna save 49,800 and change, is that right?
That's my estimate, yeah.
And then the estimated for your new employee is 33 to 40,
For the remainder of the year.
the remainder of June.
So that's factoring in a $50,000 to $60,000 yearly salary cost.
So make sure I'm reading this right. Your estimated payroll addition for a tech support is 33 to 40,000.
For the year.
For the year.
For the year, yeah, but, and you're gonna be saving from June to December 34,000 this year.
Correct.
And then from there, we'll go up to the other number that you
Regular annual.
said, 60,000 plus or whatever.
Plus, you're not including benefits in this.
I am not.
And
That's not
that would be the thing for you guys to know that. Since they're a general fund department, all of the medical expense is gonna come out of the general fund
Right.
budget for
Right.
that, so we will have to, increase that.
So it could be 30-some thousand plus.
Could be, you're right.
Yeah,
So we have
so it
44,000.
could be a 70,000 hit. And plus all of next year on top of that.
Well, it wouldn't be, the benefits wouldn't be a full 12 months of
Right.
benefits. It would be
It would be next
less
year.
9 months, or depends on when the hire occurs, obviously, because it's a number, but it would be less this year.
But yeah, I'm
next year.
talking next year.
Yeah,
Yes, this
probably a
isn't-
full year basis.
This
You're
isn't
looking
one
worst
and
case
done and they're out. 6
Scenario
months.
is about 100,000, 90 to 100,000, depending on what the.
Depends, and
Right.
that's a
What you-
variable you can never,
Right, on
They
what
may get their
benefit
coverage through a
package they
spouse,
take.
like my coverage is through my spouse, and it's not with the county. So that's at 0. But you can't ask those things, so.
You should assume 70 to 100 when it's all done. That's what I would use minus the offset.
Minus the offset.
Correct.
Do you know what your budget was in 23? Total budget,
It was somewhere over 800,000.
and what was it in 80 or 24?
860,000 was I think about a 10% increase.
And you're anticipating 900,000 this year?
No, it's essentially the same this year, I think is what we kept it.
Last year, we had budgeted for, was it the poll books? That we did?
Right.
That was 2023.
Okay.
The other thing that's not included in the budget is any of the offsets provided by the state, which we had last year and we have this year. This year's 103,000. Last year was 130.
Well, last year was not. Last year was about $20,000.
It was 20.
And we can't predict.
And that 103 that the state is giving us is based on a formula that they determine.
Right.
And we estimate that that's actually more than we need. So we'll be rebating the state a certain amount.
Rebating the state and also savings from our overall budget for this year.
Right.
So there'll be reductions in our budget for PEOs and all kinds of things.
Right.
So when we're talking 860, then be minus 103, then.
Right.
Minus
Probably about
80,
85.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's, Jim said, it is nice. This time they front loaded the money. Typically, it's,
Right.
we expenses go up and then they reimburse us on the back end.
It's a nice float came in.
Which was more.
Yeah.
We talked to our rep about more.
It was predictable and year to year.
And that is one of the things we get, the auditor will ask us, can you tell us what that amount is that you're getting from the state? Well, they haven't made that decision yet, so we're always saying to the auditor, we don't know, there isn't a number. But then what it will do is in January, February, then it'll come through. But from a budgetary standpoint, we can't offset it in the numbers when we're looking at, when we're forecasting it.
And the auditor would have the chargeback numbers, right, Jason?
Yes.
They typically run for even years for presidential and gubernatorial about 12 to 18,000. For election like this, a lot of it goes to the county chargeback, so it doesn't really count. But it's about 60 to 70,000.
Are you from, do you understand the chargeback? You do, I'm sure. The
Yeah,
chargeback
I'm
idea,
familiar.
Yeah, yeah, the repayment, like we charge the entities, they repay us, but it goes to you.
Goes to us.
So that's kind of like off of our budget. So sometimes when we come, we have to come at the end of the year for supplemental.
Right.
And some of it is because of those chargebacks that end up in the general revenue fund instead of the.
And counties and boards of elections handle that differently, county by county. Some, it's the chargeback comes right back off and back into our budget. Some commissioners, you have a choice of doing that. So that's. In this particular.
Our current financial system doesn't let us do that. We used to be able to with the old system, if we incurred the expense and got the credit within the same fiscal period.
Sure.
We could receive it in and credit it back. With the new system, it doesn't allow for that. You have to just do a supplemental appropriation.
Yeah.
Once the money's received.
But your question's right, is that there's two numbers to that, when you're looking at our budget. And it depends on what is on the ballot. And so how do you forecast what that charge, as a budgetary item, we can't tell you because we don't know exactly what is going to come in and people are going to ask to have on the ballot. We're very good at it, those numbers at the end of December.
Yeah.
Down to the
But
penny.
if you ask us in January, I can't help you.
Very precise at the end of
Yeah,
December.
I'm real good at that.
Speaking of that, we have a special election coming up. Do you want to tell the voters what that involves or what that's about? And of course, election integrity is essential to our republic. So if this position means we don't have election integrity, we don't have this, then we've got to do it. But if there's, obviously, we want to be fiscally responsible too, but
Absolutely.
what are you expecting the turnout to be in the upcoming special election? And what is the issue that,
What's the
Voters need to
special
know.
election you're talking?
yes?
So we're not having a primary, so that the primary would have been driven by candidates in Mount Vernon. So the primary, so then it becomes what's called a special election. And special elections occur when we have a statewide bond issue that is up. So that's going to be all the precincts were going to be open 100%. If we weren't, we would have had, it would have been a much smaller footprint. A few townships, right? So, but again, we can't predict any of that. There are some boards of elections that what they'll do is they predict, they do full-on elections for May, August, and November, and put those, and they fund and budget for those, and then the August is supposed to not happen, but sometimes it's usually the state legislature can't help themselves, and they go ahead and create one, and that becomes a problem because an election runs about 120 days. When you do 120 days in May, and you do 120 days in August, and then you do 120 in November, they start to overlap. And when it starts to overlap, that creates, we're talking about integrity, that creates chaos, that creates disruption. And then we have to balloon up staff to be able to have the staff to be able to do that. In this particular election, we'll have candidates that will be pushed forward to November. There's not an August election that is scheduled at this time.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. We kind of, when those deadlines cross, we kind of in the office do a few high fives. Because when we're trying to then reset all of this, we're trying to check boundaries, streets, all of those borders, all of those things, because there's layers upon layers of not just precincts, but then there's fire districts and then we'll have overlaps with Licking or overlaps with, other counties. All of those things are layers and things that we're watching. So back to your question is that we will have a state, or it's a statewide, countywide question with regard to bonds. And then there will be local questions with fire departments and
Furtertown Park District.
the Park District, right?
Clinton Township Fire Levy.
Right.
And a few overlaps from Licking.
And so to your question about election integrity, I think there's two overlaps there. One is having an extra person provides a little room in the staff's day so that they're not rushing around making mistakes. And we're kind of to that point, if I could interpret what Jack was saying a little bit, is like, we're almost at that maximum capacity for sloppiness because there's so much work. People are just kind of running around trying to get everything done. And then this position specifically deals with the election systems, not so much IT, the network, but just like the hardware, the software that's unique to the Ohio election system. A lot of that is chosen for us what it is, but this person would have that in-depth knowledge of those systems so that they don't make mistakes themselves. It's not just like, they're unfamiliar with the software, they only deal with it a couple times, like they will be the experts. And that will reduce errors.
And our IT department will continue its monitoring of our systems and investigate any potential intrusions, which they are notified and they do investigate those throughout the year. But as Jeff said, we don't just double check things, we triple check things. But there comes a point where we will always check it, but you run a greater risk if you are spread thin, if you're just too tired to check it properly, you think you are. That's the risk.
Well, mistakes are made when you burned out.
You betcha.
Yep.
Right.
And the question about for the recovery from the election. And we heard from election officials that, a presidential election, and when we go to our conventions, they always ask, stand up if you've been to we've had this many presidential elections. And it goes on into these, where they have many, they've been doing this for 40, 50 years. And you kind of question why, but because it is a very difficult, and it exacts its toll on all of us. It's a very intense situation where there's lots of things that are, that you have to keep and maintain, and you're not allowed to have any mistakes in it. And we were very lucky, but I think it's because of our staff doing a very good job. Is that the last election, we were able to handle that and do it, and that's the entire staff's first presidential election. So we'll be able to stand up at the convention a little longer this next time. But it's intense, and the integrity thing gets more and more complicated by the month because more things continue to be. There are bad actors out there that continue to try to disrupt these things, and we have to they only have to be accurate once. We have to be bulletproof 100% of the time.
Yes.
And we've been very successful at that. We hear stories at the convention and things like that where things don't go as planned, and we come back and take notes as to, okay, I didn't even think of that. Okay, then let's protect the system. And so it's all of that, but then it's a moving target because people move in and out of the county. or they move, you know, right around the corner. But all of that stuff, we have to have a fingerprint on and making sure that we know where they are and how it all works and whether they're registered and whether or not they meet the criteria to be able to vote. And then they might not meet that criteria, and then we have a provisional voter. And so those things are all kind of the things that we try to juggle on a
I'm gonna
daily
throw a
basis.
wrench in there. Do you see us ever going back to just paper ballots and on the day of the election?
Well, we are a paper ballot county. So when you fill out a ballot or you receive a ballot, you'll either receive a card that looks like a computer card, or you'll receive a paper ballot. And those things those are completed. So we're a hybrid of you do it on the screen and then it prints it. And that person receives it and they can see their vote. It also records it on a drive. So we have that as well. And then also on we receive the paper ballot, but then when it's scanned, we have an electronic image of the ballot. And so we have there's multiple layers of where we can go. You know, those redundancies are very important because if something were to malfunction, you'd see us going to certain areas. Again, I won't go into all of it, but you'll see us going to certain areas or doing certain things where we're then starting to check systems to see where they are. We're going to have our LNA testing on the 24th and 25th, meaning that we go and we take a sample ballot, all the different ballots, we take those and we run them through the machines. And so those machines are supposed to accept only the ballot that it's programmed for, right? So we'll try to give it a different ballot and see it reject it. We'll try to, it's in essence, we're trying to break the system by doing it repetitively with different things. We've been very good at those things coming back and they're, you know, it's important to try to test those systems to see if they do it.
Well, I would tell you, I thank you for the tour you gave me because it opened my eyes. I didn't know there were so many spinning parts.
It's a
Spinning
lot of
plates and
things.
herding cats.
I never thought I could juggle.
Yeah, a lot of things in motion.
Yeah.
Thank you for the tour.
Yeah, we
yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah, and our doors are always open. If you ever have questions, please come over. Just especially when we're doing this, come over during LNA testing and see us do it. We'll even we'll recruit you and have you start.
I will put you to work.
We'll put you to work. But it's fascinating to see.
Yeah,
Because we'll also we'll take a ballot and we'll mark it incorrectly and to see if the machine will reject it. Because we're not only acceptance, but we're also trying to make sure that it can reject.
What does market incorrectly mean?
Marking incorrectly. So
Double votes.
double votes, outside the lines. We've seen many different ways of marking a ballot. The machines are very sophisticated to catch things like that, but sometimes what they'll do is that there might be a situation where a person's not capable of marking the ballot in the line, right? And so we'll get that, but when that happens and the rejections accept, we want that rejection, because what we'll do is then we pull it and then it goes to Jack and I for review. And because the Republican and Democrat are reviewing it, and then we generally, more often, I don't think we've ever disagreed on any of it. It's somewhat obvious.
Are you saying a Democrat and a Republican can agree on something?
Absolutely. They have to in our office because we're made up of Democrats and Republicans and it's a
an
really,
equal share, isn't it, Jim?
yeah. Because
It's Republican
Because
and
if I'm a Republican, which I am, and Jack, then the deputy has to be a Democrat. And so when you go through and when I gave you tours, the tour, in order to get into some of those rooms, you have to have a Republican and a Democrat to swipe the card to get us into those rooms. And so that's also part of the problem, is that when you have a small staff, you have to have someone from the other party to be able to enter into the equipment
Right.
room. And if you don't have them there that day,
Yeah.
then you don't do it. And so there's always this, jockeying of vacations and time off and,
Mhm.
things.
So your new employee will be an independent then?
So to answer your second question, Commissioner, I think early voting has proved so convenient.
Yeah.
That I don't think we'll go back to just day of voting anymore.
Yeah.
And that makes things more complicated. And yes, we don't necessarily have to go into them, but like, that just adds more work. It's more convenient for the voter, so of course it's good, but there's a cost on the back end.
Because we check, the voter records of making sure we have this many ballots cast and this many voter records of ballots cast, and we have to reconcile that every day. If it was all just election day, then it'd be one big mess we dealt with then, but that's 2 hours of my morning are devoted to checking, making sure those reconcile every
So
morning.
it's like 30 little elections.
30
almost, right, up till the big one, right?
During the early vote, we're audited overnight, so the Secretary of State sees what's going on, and then they get reports that are fed up to them to tell us, you have to balance out. So that's what Jack will be doing once we get it open, then it's turned to the audit and do a daily audit, so there's no discrepancies. And so we've been very successful at having those daily audit. Well, we don't let go of it till we do track down something. And you can and what can cause a discrepancy is that someone gets a ballot, they complete their ballot, and then they walk out the door with that ballot, right? Well, then our numbers are off.
Yeah.
Because the machines haven't received what they need to receive, and then we have to figure out what that is.
We have to account for
We have to account for that. So thank you for the security, video system that we have. Sometimes it's easy and we can go, yeah, they had it in their hand and there they go. And then we follow them, the cameras to the parking lot. Yeah, there they are. Okay. Then we track back and try to see if we can identify who it is. So we can call them and say, oh, by the way, could you help us?
But it becomes an abandoned ballot, right?
Right.
You have to vote provisionally when they come back in.
So it creates all this, like there's layers and levels of all this stuff that we have to look at. But to answer your question, is that the technology's gotten better and better. And we're a county that is, it's firewalled, and there are things that we do not have modems in our equipment, that type of thing. And the vendors ask us on certain pieces of equipment whether or not we want that, and we've told them no. And we have confirmed that so that the voting public understands that our machines do not have modems in them.
Therefore, no hacking ability.
Correct.
Can't be
You could
hacked.
not get into the
Can't get
machine
into the machine.
from the internet or anything like that.
Right.
It's all little drives, and so then on election day, or you'll see us running tapes, big long tapes, and you'll see us take drives. A Republican and a Democrat board member will take the drives up into the ballot room, and then those things get into the system. And so those are all important safeguards that I'm very confident in what we have and the equipment that we have.
And our voter rolls are clean, right, Jim?
Our voter rolls are
They're always a
depends on the
moving target.
day and depends on what someone did today, but yes. We are constantly updating those on a daily basis, but it's always something that we're catching up to. Because there's constant movement. When you have the 44,108 registered voters, they all are moving around and doing things, as you all know. And so if they move out of the state and they don't tell us, that becomes problematic. And so we wish they would, but not everybody follows up with that.
But there's
We
a
have-
system to
We have
catch.
ways.
But when they re-register, it will catch up with them, correct? If I would move from here to Michigan. But anyway, maybe not Michigan.
Okay.
How about Indiana?
Okay.
Florida.
If I
Florida,
if I
yeah.
would move
Make it
from
fun.
here to Indiana and I registered to vote and I didn't tell you, would the system catch up and tell you or that I'm in Indiana?
Eventually it will.
Eventually.
Not immediately.
But we don't have like the Doge, they found out there were people that were 150 that were still voting, that kind of thing. And I think we don't have aged out voters that are still on our roll.
You will find those 1900 birth dates in the system due to the same reason why it's in the other one, because of just a the age of the voter or grandfathered processes in. So they're very rare and they're fading out as the system matures, but you will still find those in the system.
Our voting system does not delete the person out of our system. It just makes it that they can, they're, so if someone passes away,
Again,
called the Steve's file goes in and we then move them into the status that they have died. But that does, the file doesn't go away. We keep that file and we maintain and monitor that if someone came in and walked in and said that they were, you know, this person, and we have them in the registration as a deceased individual, then we know that there's something going on. And so that you can't have dead voters voting in the county. So system will catch those things. And there's a process that the state has that enables us to watch that and put them in a precautionary status, of status that's provisional status, conditional status that we want to watch them. And so we then update all of our machines that when we're voting on election day or downstairs or an early vote, and that person's name will come up, and it could come up and it has a red bar through it, means they can't vote, or it has a yellow bar through it, means we need more information, something wrong in the file, which could be they moved around the corner, or something else. They have their driver's license doesn't match their registration file or something to that effect. We're constantly checking those things.
We appreciate your education.
Yes, we
And
do.
if you guys are,
But, yeah,
Sorry to keep you.
This is integral. It's
if you
important.
guys are good, I'll have Jack send
Yeah.
me that
Yeah.
sheet. I'll run the numbers for the budget, get back to you guys, and then once we have the definitive numbers, I'll get it back to the commissioners to make it.
when groups usually come, they bring the snacks and stuff. So I mean, you guys didn't.
We were told no.
I did see some crumbs here on the table.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, Jack.
See, you too. Take care.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Good to see
Yeah.
you.
Good to see you again.
We don't always shake hands with
I
Democrats.
know what you-
I love my part.
Next.
Oh, you're welcome.
Mr. Gaki, good to see you.
You too.
See you Thursday,
Yeah,
if not before.
you want to see ya.
Okay, I have just a couple of updates, commissioners, and that's it for today. One, just standard protocol, but we received a notification from a farm in Fredericktown, Ohio, just notifying us, the county engineer, that Ohio Department of Agriculture rules that they're planning to build a litter storage facility on their poultry farm. And so Penny, I'm gonna send that down to you if you'll just enter that in the record that we received that. I think that'll be good. I talked to JT Deshawn, EMA director, just wanted to put out tomorrow, there's a statewide tornado drill at 9:50, so sirens will be going off throughout the county at 9:50 tomorrow, so he wanted to pass that along. And quick update on the back entry project. That is progressing. We did run into an area, we're gonna have to relocate they call it a static meter. It's part of our power system. Outside, it's attached to the building. AEP's been in a couple times. We've met with them. We've determined where we can relocate that. So we have that scheduled for Saturday, March 29th. We tried to get that done on the weekend, and they'll need to take the power down to this building for approximately 3 hours for that to be relocated. So I talked to IT, they'll be here on site that day. We'll notify 911, which they'll run on the generator, so that's not an issue. But we're gonna get that done, and then they can proceed with demoing that white column out there that has the houses that outside of the elevator shaft. So that's where we're at on that, and other than that, we're moving forward with that project.
Just a quick update, the Patriotic Memorial Day Parade. We need to make sure our flags in the memorial building is open on that day.
See our flags in the memorial.
The flags are at half mast
Okay.
and the memorial building is open for conveniences.
Yeah.
So.
Any date on that is?
Memorial Day. Memorial Day. 26.
Yeah.
We'll be on a Monday.
Yeah, it's the first Monday or the last Monday. It's
All right.
always a Monday.
Anything else need to be shared?
No, I'm good there, thank you.
Well, thank you. Take motion for adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
So we stand adjourned. Thank you.